Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
All right, let's talk about something that was supposed to be a real possibility just a few weeks ago and now seems completely dead in the water. The Ketel Marte trade. Remember when everyone was talking about how the Blue Jays needed a second baseman, how Arizona was open to moving pieces, how Marte was the perfect fit? Well, that's not happening anymore. And I think we need to examine why this fell apart and what it means for Toronto's offseason plans, because this could be a huge missed opportunity. So here's the backstory. Ketel Marte is one of the most underrated players in baseball. Switch hitting second baseman who can also play center field, hits for average, hits for power, gets on base, plays solid defense. He's basically everything you want in a middle infielder. And the Diamondbacks, who made the World Series in 23, have been rumored to be open to moving him if the right offer came along. They've got financial constraints. They need to reload their farm system, and Marte has real trade value. On paper, this should have been a perfect match for Toronto. The Blue Jays need middle infield help, especially if Bo Bichette walks. They need versatile players who can hit. They have prospects they could trade. Everything lined up for this deal to happen. Reports were coming out that Toronto had interest, that Arizona was listening, that there were real conversations happening. And then, just like that, it all went cold. The rumors stopped. The momentum died. And now it feels like this trade is dead before it ever really got started. So what happened? Why did this fall apart? I think there are a few reasons, and none of them are good for the Blue Jays. First, I think Toronto got too focused on the Kyle Tucker trade and lost sight of their other needs. They spent all their time and resources going after Tucker, negotiating with Houston, giving up whatever prospects they gave up. And by the time that deal was done, they didn't have the bandwidth or the assets to also go after Marte. That's poor planning. That's not being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Second, I think Arizona's asking price was probably too high for what Toronto was willing to pay. The Diamondbacks aren't stupid. They know Marte is valuable. They know middle infielders who can hit are rare. They probably wanted one of Toronto's top prospects, maybe multiple good prospects, and the Blue Jays balked. They didn't want to gut their farm system after already trading for Tucker, so they walked away. And now they're stuck without a clear plan at second base or as a Bo Bichette replacement if he leaves. Here's why this bothers me so much. Ketel Marte is exactly the kind of player Toronto needs right now. He's 31 years old, so he's in his prime. He's proven. He's been to the postseason. He knows how to perform in big moments. He hit .295 last year with 36 home runs. 36 home runs from a second baseman. That's elite production. And he can play multiple positions, which gives you roster flexibility. If Bo stays, Marte plays second. If Bo walks, Marte can shift around to fill different needs. That versatility is incredibly valuable. But instead of making this trade happen, instead of being aggressive and solving a real need, the Blue Jays just let it die. They let the opportunity slip away because they were too focused on other things or too cheap to pay the price. And now what? Now they're going to go into spring training with question marks at second base and no real backup plan if Bo leaves. That's organizational malpractice. Let me give you a specific scenario that shows how valuable Marte would have been. Let's say the Blue Jays trade for Marte in addition to Tucker. Now you've got Tucker in right field, Marte at second base, and you can let Bo walk without panicking. Your infield is Vlad at first, Marte at second, someone new at short, and Matt Chapman at third. That's a really good defensive infield with multiple guys who can hit. You've addressed your needs, you've got flexibility, and you're not desperately scrambling in free agency, but they didn't do it. They let the Marte opportunity die, and now they're in a much worse position. Here's another angle that nobody's talking about. If the Diamondbacks were willing to trade Marte, that tells you something about their situation. They're not trying to compete right now, or at least they're not going all in. That means they would have taken a reasonable package of prospects. This wasn't going to cost you your entire farm system, but the Blue Jays either didn't want to pay even a reasonable price or they weren't serious about it to begin with. Either way, it's a failure of execution. And let's talk about what Arizona is thinking right now. They probably look at Toronto and see a team that's not fully committed. The Blue Jays called about Marte, had some conversations, but never made a serious push. Arizona moved on to other things, started talking to other teams, and now that window's closed. You can't just casually check in on trades and expect teams to wait around for you to make up your mind. You have to be decisive. You have to be aggressive. The Blue Jays were neither. Now, some people will say maybe the trade wasn't as close as the media made it seem. Maybe Arizona was never that serious about moving Marte. And, okay, that's possible. But even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that Toronto should have been pushing harder. They should have been making offers, increasing their bids, doing whatever it took to get the deal done, because Marte solves real problems for them. But they didn't do that. They let it fizzle out. Here's what really concerns me about this situation. It's a pattern. The Blue Jays have a history of being in on players, being rumored for deals, and then ultimately not pulling the trigger. You know, they were in on Shohei Ohtani and didn't get him. They've been linked to various free agents and trades over the years, and more often than not, they come up empty. At some point, you have to ask if there's a deeper issue. Is the front office too conservative? Are they not willing to pay market price? Do other teams not take them seriously? Something's going on here. And let's be real about what Arizona's going to do now. They're probably going to trade Marte to somebody else. Maybe the Astros need a second baseman. Maybe the Yankees come calling. Some contender is going to step up, pay the price, and get a really good player who could help them win a championship. And the Blue Jays are going to be on the outside looking in, wondering why they didn't make it happen when they had the chance. Here's the worst part about all of this. Marte is a switch hitter. That's huge for lineup balance. The Blue Jays are heavily right-handed, and having a switch hitter who can produce from both sides of the plate gives you so much more flexibility. Against tough righties, Marte bats left. Against tough lefties, he bats right. You're never at a disadvantage, but Toronto either didn't value that enough or didn't think it was worth the prospect cost. Either way, it's a missed opportunity. Let me give you another comparison that illustrates why this is such a failure. Think about what the Dodgers do. When they identify a player they want, they go get him. They don't mess around. They make the best offer. They get the deal done, and they move on. You know, the Blue Jays identify a player, have some conversations, worry about the cost, and then walk away. That's the difference between championship organizations and everyone else. The Dodgers just won the World Series. The Blue Jays just lost Game 7. Maybe there's a lesson there. Now, is the Ketel Marte trade completely dead? Maybe not. Maybe something could be revived if Arizona doesn't find a better offer elsewhere. But the momentum is gone. The urgency is gone. And in baseball, once momentum dies on a trade, it rarely comes back. Teams move on. Circumstances change. What was possible in November isn't possible in January. So yeah, I think this trade is dead and the Blue Jays missed their chance. Here's what this means going forward. If Bo Bichette walks, Toronto's going to have to scramble. They'll probably overpay in free agency for a lesser player, or they'll make a desperation trade that costs them more than Marte would have. They could have been proactive and solved this problem weeks ago, but they weren't. And now they're going to pay the price for that lack of foresight. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have Ketel Marte at second base for the next few years, or would you rather hope that some internal option works out or that you can find someone in free agency? Because that's essentially what the Blue Jays chose. They chose hope over certainty. They chose saving prospects over addressing needs. And I don't think that's a winning strategy for a team that just lost Game 7 and has a closing championship window. Here's my final take on this. The Ketel Marte trade being dead is a symptom of a bigger problem with how the Blue Jays operate. They're not aggressive enough. They're not decisive enough. They let opportunities slip away because they're too worried about cost or too focused on other things. And until that changes, until they start operating with the urgency and aggression of a true championship contender, they're going to keep falling short. Marte was gettable. He would have made them better. And now he's probably going to help some other team win while Toronto is left with holes in their roster and questions they can't answer.